and welcome to episode 24 of Let's Hear It. I am lucky enough to be in Woodstock, New York today, outside on a beautiful fall day. Just figured take the opportunity while it's still warm enough to film outside. So that's where I am. That's what I'm doing. Today's guest is Jesse Aycock. He's down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he's going to show us his 1956 Fender Deluxe lap steel guitar. And the lap steel guitar really developed in Hawaii. It was actually invented by a young kid through accident, a guy named Joseph Kakuku, in the late 1880s, I believe. He was just walking down a road, or some people say he was walking on a railroad track with an acoustic guitar, and he saw a rusty bolt that would have been probably came out of a railroad tie or something, and he picked it up, and it happened to hit his guitar strings, and he heard this sliding sound and decided, wow, what can I do with this? And he started messing around with this thing, using it to slide across the strings. Eventually he went to a pocket knife and started using that, and then a metal bar, which is what is still used today. And Jesse will show us what the metal bar, or some people use a slide. But Joseph Kakuku really developed the Hawaiian lap steel guitar and was hugely influential in the sound of Hawaiian music, which was a sensation in the early 1900s all over the world. And he left Hawaii, came to the United States, and played in a quintet that was, I think, Joseph Kakuku Quintet. Also, there was a Broadway show called Bird of Paradise, which took over the world, all over Europe, all over the US, and really popularized Hawaiian music and the lap steel guitar and ukuleles as well. And fun fact, I grew up in Randolph, New Jersey, and I just discovered that Joseph Kakuku lived in Dover, New Jersey, which is about 5 minutes from where I grew up, and he lived there and died there from like 1932, and then died in the early 50s. So that's kind of shocking that the guy who developed Hawaiian lap steel guitar wound up 5 minutes from where I grew up. Well, fun fact. Anyway, let's say hello to Jesse Aycock in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hello, Jesse.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Got a haircut, huh?
I did get a haircut, yeah. Just on a whim, decided to cut it all off.
Looking good. You look like you're ready to either join like a new wave band or like an Austin, Texas, like kind of roadhouse band.
Yeah, there's a new direction on the horizon, I'm sure.
Well, cool, man. What do you have today? You have a 1956 Fender Deluxe lap steel. Tell us how you got it and where it came from and what you love about it.
I got this off Craigslist, and I don't even quite remember the year. It would have been in the early to mid 2000s, probably around 2005 or something, 4 or 5. And I got it off this guy on Craigslist, and he said that it was all original, but it was missing legs. So it had like these 3 legs that would screw on and sort of go out as in a tripod sort of formation, so you could stand up and play. But I've always preferred sitting down. If I could sit down and play guitar and everything, I would, because it's I just like the approach it gives.
Yeah.
But so the legs didn't matter to me, and then I also took it to my friend Seth Lee Jones, who's a luthier here in Tulsa, and he was going through it all and pulled the pickup out and actually found out that the pickup wasn't original. It was a Mexican Squire Telly pickup. So little trick there, and this whole time I kept telling people, yeah, it's all original, and they're like, it sounds great, and Mexican Squire Telly pickup actually sounded pretty good, but he talked me into getting this Kinman pickup. I think they're made out of Australia, and I put that in, and it really kind of opened things up even more. It's a great pickup, so that's what's in there now, and so it's been quite beat up. When I got this thing, it was it's hard to tell probably here, but like where the Fender emblem is, it's a little bit cleaner looking, and the whole steel looked like that when I got it, and it's just over the years, all the grime and wear and tear, it's just got wood coming off. That's all from just playing this thing a lot. So it's kind of cool to see an instrument age, as you play it. It's kind of its own unique thing.
I know you played that. So Jesse was in the Hardworking Americans, a great band with Dave Schools and Todd Snyder and Neil Casale and Chad Staley. And you also have a couple great solo albums. You also played on Kenny Roby's newest album.
Yes.
Actually, our past episode was your buddy John Lee Shannon, who also got his instrument from Craigslist. So you're 2 in a row on Craigslist.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes. So what do you normally play that through? What kind of amp?
My main rig for years has been a 71 silver-faced Vibrolux. It's this great sounding amp, but as soon as like touring went away and sort of larger stages, it's just too much for anything local or really any smaller clubs or anything or in the house. So I got this blackface Princeton Reverb. It's like a newer one, a reissue, and I just I put a different speaker in it and stuff, and that's what I've been gigging with a lot, because it's plenty loud. It's just kind of the perfect size amp, and kind of makes me not want to go back to a big amp again. It's easier to haul around and it sounds good. But this amp I'm playing through today is my favorite amp that I have. It's this Alamo, and they were made in Texas. I have a few of them, and I even have one that's like the exact model of this, but for some reason this amp has a special thing. It just has that magic touch, and I don't know what it is, but it's a great amp, and I've recorded with it quite a bit. I've loaned it to friends to record with, but right now it has like a slight rattle, so it hasn't been on recordings because there's something in here that rattling that I haven't been able to get to, but it's a cool amp.
You using any pedals?
I am using some. This doesn't have reverb, and it sounds great dry for certain things, but I just threw my pedal board up just to have some reverb and maybe a couple other fun tricks to just kind of experiment with,
Cool. All right, well, let's hear what it sounds like. Looking forward to this. Wow, beautiful. Um, who are your influences? What made you go for a lap steel? You've used that. I think I first heard about you from our mutual friend Lex Armstrong in London, and she had mentioned you to Neil Casal and I think you and Neil quickly became friends and worked on a couple things together, and then wound up in the Hardworking Americans. I know Neil produced one of your records as well. But what made you gravitate towards the lap steel?
My friend Jared Tyler, he's a really fantastic musician here that produced my first record, and he played dobro, and he had a lap steel and as well, and I really wasn't that familiar with either instrument. I'd heard them and stuff, but I just didn't really know much about them, and I didn't really know it could be used in other kinds of music. I was at the time I just associated it all more with country, and then in the process of recording that record, he pulled a dobro out and he had an ebow and was playing ebow on a dobro, and it sounded really cool. And so the sound of that was really fascinating, and so I was interested, and then he was like, oh man, you should hear the lap steel with this. And so he pulled the lap steel out and started playing it, and the sound just really resonated with me. I was already getting into slide guitar at the time. I was really into the Allman Brothers and stuff, and that sort of thing. And so then I'm like, I said I have to get a lap steel. And there's just something about the flexibility in having no frets. It just opens up a whole different thing, and there's certain sounds you can get that are just slightly off, and it adds a certain color to things sometimes in an interesting way. And so I had to get a lap steel, and my first lap steel was this Magnetone that was sort of perlite, and it's a little smaller scale, and I played that forever. I still have it. It took a beating though, so it still works, but it's like just beat up. But it's a really neat sounding instrument as well. But that was the first thing I got started on. But the tuning I use, the low D, because its scale is even shorter than this Fender, it just it was hard to tune that D up tight enough to where it wasn't just getting pitchy all the time, and that's where this came in, and it just kind of stuck. But I guess that was really sort of my introduction, was through Jared, and then at that same time I was starting to really get into. I got super obsessed with Bill Frisell. He did this record with Elvin Jones, that I don't think it has a title. I think it's got monsters on the front, but it's a really it's a beautiful record. But there's some recordings of them doing live stuff with Greg Lees, and so when I heard Greg Lees play, it really, like, he was such an inspiration to me. Of course, I'd heard David Lindley before that, and was familiar with him and love what he does. But whenever I heard the Bill Frisell record and heard Greg Lees play, I was kind of inspired by that and led me down a pathway.
So Bill Frisell and Greg Lees, I think it was the late 2000s, and Greg Lees is a friend of mine, and certainly going to ask him to come on the show, because I would love to have him come on. He has so many different cool instruments. And lap steel, I think I first really became aware of lap steel when I was a teenager, and I heard Jackson Browne Running on Empty, and heard David Lindley's just absolutely ripping guitar solo, still one of the greatest guitar solos ever, I would say, on Running on Empty, 1977.
Yeah. That's such a ripping solo. It's great.
Also, like, Tulsa is one of my favorite cities to visit, and of course, Leon Russell and J.J. Cale and Hanson, and lots of cool music. Roy Clark came out of there as well. And I know you're on a Tulsa compilation right now, so what's that all about?
Yeah, we just released a record that's we did called Back to Paradise. It's called that because we did it at Paradise Studios. It's out on Grand Lake in eastern Oklahoma, and where Leon Russell had a lake house studio. That's you can actually see some of the old footage of that in Les Blank did a really beautiful documentary called A Poem as a Naked Person. And so all the footage in that is, or almost 95% of it's all shot there at the lake studio. So we went out there with just a group of friends, kind of collectively, and we selected some different songs that, J.J. Cale and the Gap Band and Jesse Davis, just some people that were from around here, and paid tribute to them and the best way we could, and had a lot of fun doing it. So, yeah, it's good stuff. A deep well.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, it's been just about a year since we were up here in Woodstock making that Kenny Roby album, so it's great to be up here, and great to see you, and I hope I do get to see you again soon.
It's true. It really is. Just right at that. It's great to talk to you, and I wish I was there in the woods with you.
Thanks for coming on. Well, there you go. That's episode 24 of Let's Hear It. Thanks to Jesse Aycock down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We'll be back in a couple days with another episode. Some really interesting stuff coming up. So check back and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And see you in a couple days. Thanks.